Before he could finish speaking the name, her stiletto stabbed at him. It was aimed at one of Ain's eyes, through the narrow vision slit of his helmet. Ains forcefully jerked his head to the side, and while he managed to evade the stiletto thrust, the sound of metal shrieking against metal echoed through his helmet. Before he could breathe a sigh of relief that he had avoided the worst of it, he glimpsed Clementine readying her stiletto for another attack out of the corner of his eye. Che. Even after factoring in the differences in their physical abilities, Clementine's straight-line thrust was faster than the circular swing of Ain's greatsword. This time, the stiletto struck home, hitting Ain's dead-on. HM? GUH. A surprised voice and a panicked voice hit the air at the same time. Ains pressed his greatsword against his helmet and jumped far back, but there was no follow-up attack. Clementine glanced at Ain's unsightly retreat, then looked curiously at the tip of her stiletto. With a mocking laugh, she said, "That's enough of that handicap stuff. If you don't go all out you're going to die." And then, to clear up her own doubts, Clementine continued asking the silent Ains, "Still, how did you do it? I know I hit you, but you're fine. I thought I would have hurt you with that, good grief. I've learned a lot from this battle. First, about these things called martial arts, and also, the fact that I can't swing my swords around blindly during combat, and the importance of maintaining my balance while attacking." Huh? Are you an idiot? If you've only learned that now, then you're a failure as a warrior. Oh well, it doesn't matter since you're going to die here, though I'd like an answer to my question. Was it some sort of defensive martial art? Clementine's tone showed that she had had it with Ains. He, on the other hand, smiled bitterly under his helmet, because he agreed with what she had said. "No, you're right. I really am unskilled, you have my thanks. Although since time is tight, playtime is now over." Paying no heed to the doubt on Clementine's face, Ains shouted at the top of his voice, "Narbril Gamma. Display the power of Nazarick." He swiveled the sword hilts in his hands, and then stabbed the points of both his greatswords into the ground. Ains extended his empty hands before him, and gently beckoned Clementine over. "Now then, come at me with the intent to die. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit, so, you can use the fly spell. Looks like you're not bluffing. Although, how did you avoid that last hit? I didn't see you behind the skeletal dragons." That puzzled question reached Narbril, who was slowly descending from the heavens. Khajiit had no idea why she had not used the fly spell to escape. She could have done so when encountering the skeletal dragons, but she had not. It baffled him. "Humph, you think you can win? Against skeletal dragons, who are immune to magic? There are any number of ways to win, but before that..." Narbril grabbed at her shoulder and pulled off her robe. "Rejoice, inferior lifeform, human. You have the honor of doing battle with Narbril Gamma, one of the battle maids, Pleiades, who are the loyal servants of Ains Ul Gaun, the absolute ruler of the great tomb of Nazarick." Her equipment was completely different. She now wore gauntlets and greaves of gold, silver, and black metal, as well as a set of maid-themed armor which looked like it had come out of a manga. In place of a helmet, she wore a maid's white-brimmed headdress. In her hands she held a staff of gold inlaid with silver. Player-made items in Yggdrasil could have their abilities changed by using data crystals. Narbril's robe had a quick-change crystal embedded in it, so she could directly swap out her gear for a set of predetermined equipment without having to waste time changing. Her cast-off robe now occupied the pocket dimension where they had been. Khajiit narrowed his eyes in puzzlement as he saw the maid before him, and when he finally realized what was going on, "What?" he exclaimed in surprise. Of course he would have been taken aback when the magic caster before him turned into a maid. Although he was annoyed by her nonsensical get-up, Narbril's serene expression filled Khajiit with a sense of danger. He immediately ordered the skeletal dragons to attack. The two skeletal dragons drew close to Narbril with surprising speed, swinging their forepaws, which were made of countless bones. Before they could strike home, Narbril cast a spell. Dimensional move. That again. Once more, Narbril vanished without a trace. Khajiit looked to the sky to look for the missing Narbril, as he thought of what had happened earlier. However, it was his pain that told him where Narbril was. Gaia. Khajiit's wail resounded throughout the graveyard. A searing pain pierced Khajiit's left shoulder, and the pain spread through his body with the pulse of his heartbeat. A shocked Khajiit looked at the wound, at the sharp blade that protruded from the wound. Ga. Narb Khajiit.jpg. In the next moment, the blade was savagely withdrawn, and pain washed over him again. The sensation of something scraping his bones filled his body, made worse by the agony that gripped him. Thick blood gushed from the wound, staining his black robe. Drooling from the intense pain, Khajiit jerked his head back to see what was going on. All he saw was Narbril, looking at him curiously. Did it hurt that much? Narbril was holding a black-bladed dagger in the hand that was not holding her staff. Khajiit was in so much pain that he could not speak. Magic casters typically shunned the front line, and Khajiit was the sort who was served by and dealt out pain to others. Thus, pain was not a common experience for him, which was why his tolerance for it was so low. Oily sweat beading on his forehead, Khajiit issued a mental command to the skeletal dragons. Narbril fell back, drawing away from the approaching skeletal dragons. The fly spell was faster than the running speed of a normal man. The two skeletal dragons charged into the space left by Narbril. After hiding in the safe space behind the skeletal dragons, Khajiit's calm returned to him, and he finally understood the kind of spell Narbril had used. So it was teleportation magic. Dimensional Move was a third-tier spell, but to magic casters, it was an escape spell used to put distance between themselves and their adversaries. However, that was only the case for magic casters, who were an unathletic lot. For a magic caster with fighting prowess that was on par with a warrior, that spell was arguably more valuable than even a weak attack spell, given that it was very difficult to defend against. Khajiit pressed down on his shoulder and glared at Narbril. I see, so you were planning to kill me with teleportation. You must have escaped with teleportation as well just now. Indeed, it was a tricky trump card to deal with. Since magic was useless against the skeletal dragons, the sensible thing was to kill their controller. In addition, with Narbril's skillful use of teleportation, Khajiit would have a very hard time dodging. However, Narbril casually answered, how could that be? Khajiit could not comprehend what she was saying for a moment, and blinked non-stop. Narbril returned the short sword to its sheath, and began explaining. I was simply demonstrating that I could kill you easily. Narbril had shown him how she could turn a thoroughly unfavorable situation around, but she had completely abandoned that method. Khajiit had no idea what she was up to. Are you mad? Granted, you are an inferior life form, Flea, but what kind of answer is that? Use that head of yours a little. Khajiit shuddered as he saw Narbril's cold glare. He was not trembling in anger, but in fear. Unease welled up within Khajiit's mind. Well, it's about time to wrap this up. As a servant, it would be rude of me to keep Ain-sama waiting. You seem to think magic is useless against skeletal dragons. Then, I shall enlighten you, inferior life form, Shorefly. The fee for that lesson will be your life. She released her staff and clapped her hands together. As she drew them apart again, tongues of white lightning arced between them. They took the form of dragons, and the air around them began glowing and crackling with energy. The white radiance seemed to engulf Narbril. Khajiit stared at a loss for words. He could understand that this was a mighty spell that exceeded his own frame of reference. Amidst the actinic white radiance, the cold smile on Narbril's face branded itself onto his eyes. The massive bodies of the skeletal dragons loomed before him. As he recalled their existence, an alarm screamed within him. You think you can beat skeletal dragons, who are immune to all magic? Go. Kill her. Khajiit's shouted order was laced with the panic he could no longer hide. As the two skeletal dragons drew close, Narbril laughed. It was the laugh of a merciless master correcting her foolish pupil. Immune to all magic? It's true that skeletal dragons resist magic, but that ability only applies to spells of the 6th tier and below. The skeletal dragons would not reach Narbril for some time yet. During that delay, the strangely calm Khajiit finally realized the meaning of Narbril's words. In other words, skeletal dragons cannot resist the spells of a higher tier which I, Narbril Gamma, can use. She was not lying. That was what Khajiit's instincts told him. In other words, this woman could eliminate the skeletal dragons and slay Khajiit as well. Why? My sweat and blood of 5 years, gone in less than an hour. As Khajiit let out that mournful wail, countless scenes flashed through his mind, as though he were viewing a zoetrope. Diamond suit, Khajiit Dale Bedantal. Born in a village on the outskirts of the slain theocracy, his mother was a calm, serene woman while his father had a strong body from working in the village. His childhood was mundane. The reason why he had ended up like this was because he had seen his mother's corpse. That day, when the setting sun was clearly visible in the sky, Khajiit panted as he ran home. His mother wanted him back earlier, but he had been late, because of small things he could not clearly recall. Looking for pretty stones outside the village, playing at being heroes while wielding sticks, all these insignificant things had come together and delayed him. He ran home, afraid that his mother would scold him, but when he got there, he found his mother collapsed on the ground. He could still clearly remember the warmth of his mother's body when he rushed over to touch her. He thought it was just a joke, but things turned out otherwise. Khajiit's mother had already departed this world. According to the clerics, she had died because she had a blood clot in her brain. In other words, it was nobody's fault. Nobody was to blame. No. Khajiit felt that someone was responsible. That someone was himself. If only he had returned home earlier, he might have been able to save his mother. There were many divine magic casters in the slain theocracy, and there were quite a few in Khajiit's own village. If only he had begged them for help, perhaps his mother might be well, and still smiling at him. The person who had caused his beloved mother's face to twist in agony was none other than himself. Khajiit made up his mind to atone for his misdeed. In other words, he would bring his mother back to life. Yet, the more magic he learned, the bigger the problems he encountered. There was a resurrection spell in the 5th tier of divine magic, but that spell could not resurrect his mother. Resurrection expended a tremendous amount of life force on the part of the dead person, and the deceased who lacked sufficient life force would not be resurrected, but reduced to ash and dust. His mother did not have the necessary vitality. Nor did he have the time needed to research a new resurrection spell. However, if he abandoned his humanity and became undead, he might be able to buy himself enough time to eventually develop a new spell to raise the dead. That was the conclusion which Khajiit had arrived at. He abandoned the divine magic he had studied all his life, and stepped on the path of using arcane magic to become undead. However, there were still obstacles in his way. After walking the path of an arcane magic caster, he would still need a very long time to become a high-tier undead creature, even after forsaking his humanity. And of course, there might be obstacles in his way, in the form of talent and ability, and he might not even be able to become undead in the first place. One of the ways to overcome these obstacles was to gather a massive amount of negative energy, yes, by killing an entire city's worth of people, and turning them into undead in order to harness the negative energy they would generate. And then, just as his wish was nearly granted, another obstacle appeared in his way. Diamond suit, I spent 5 years preparing in this city. I've held on to this dream for 30 years. What gives you the right to destroy all of this? You who appeared out of nowhere. Khajiit's cry was answered by cold laughter. I have no interest in the dreams of inferior lifeforms, you. Although your so-called effort did manage to make me laugh. Still, I do have some words for you. Well done on becoming a stepping stone for Ain Sama. Twin maximize magic chain dragon lightning. A roaring, coiling stream of dragon-shaped lightning appeared around both of Narbril's hands. The lightning discharges were wider than her arms, and they struck the skeletal dragons. The vast white bodies shuddered from the impact. The twin lightning blasts wrapped around the skeletal dragons' bodies, burning the false life that animated their corpses out of existence. The end came in an instant. Under the power of the magic lightning, the skeletal dragons, and their supposed absolute immunity to magic were torn asunder. Even though the skeletal dragons had been disintegrated, the lightning strikes did not disappear. The two arcs of dragon-shaped lightning seemed to be searching for their quarry, then they raised their heads and sprang at their final prey. Khajiit's vision was obliterated in a sea of white. He had no time to beg for mercy, nor did he have time to scream. The tears at the corners of his eyes flashed into steam, leaving behind a whispered mum. The searing light consumed Khajiit, and the lightning pierced him without mercy. Khajiit's body went into full-body seizures, as though he were performing some strange dance where he stood. The current penetrated deep into Khajiit's body, and ignited him from the inside. After it had vanished, the smoking Khajiit collapsed to the ground. The stench of burning flesh filled the air. Narbril shrugged, and muttered something to the pile of scorched meat that had once been Khajiit. Even inferior lifeforms, insects, smell good after they've been roasted. I wonder if it would be fine to give him to Intoma as a present. A mocking smile came over Narbril's face as she mentioned the name of her human-eating colleague. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. The warrior spread his arms, as if he were going to hug someone. Now what tricks are you up to, HM? Giving up already? Giving up? Since I've given Narbril her orders, I should wrap things up here as well. What? What nonsense are you babbling? You think you can beat the great Clementine without any martial arts? You're pissing me off. I have to say, the ravings of a weakling like yourself are quite impressive. Clementine wanted to retort with, that would be you, right? But she suppressed the boiling rage in her heart. The man before her did not have much in the way of combat skills, but he possessed superhuman physical abilities. As far as she knew, said abilities were second only to those of the two godkin, the Black Scripture's extra seat, and its first seat, who was also the Black Scripture's leader. Therefore, the way he swung his weapons at his whim became an unpredictable attack and defense, and if she was not careful, she might be killed in a single blow. Clementine faked her usual sneer, and taunted him in turn, forget it. You're right, we should wrap things up quickly. Mammon the warrior simply shrugged. Clementine eyed his stance. There were openings everywhere in his stance, but that could not possibly be all there was to him. It was a trap. However, Clementine had no choice. Her words from earlier might have sounded like a joke, but she meant them. She could probably escape from here by borrowing the power of the skeletal dragons, but that was only if she did not waste any more time. Though she had come along to avoid the agents of the Windflower Scripture, she had wasted too much time on playing. Clementine slowly sank into a crouch, strengthening her grip on her stiletto. She had to finish this fight quickly, preferably with a single stroke. Part of that was because she no longer had time to waste, but it was also because the attacks and parries of the man before her were gradually becoming more and more competent. It would be best to kill him now before he grew to a point where she could no longer do so. Clementine exhaled loudly, and then she surged forward. Gale Stride. Greater Evasion. Ability Boost. Greater Ability Boost. Those were the same 4 techniques she had used earlier, in an attempt to shrink the gap between their physical abilities. In addition, she still had room to use other techniques, no matter what Mammon tried. In this high-speed world, she was fully aware of anything her opponent could do. He might draw his swords from the ground to attack, or use a martial art, or an unarmed strike, or a hidden weapon. No, he might use a thrown weapon instead. Clementine guessed that there were dozens of tactics her foe could employ, and she was confident that she could defeat each and every one of them. However, every single one of her guesses fell short of the mark. Because her opponent did nothing. The Dark Warrior stretched out his arms, waiting for the attack. A shiver ran down her spine. This was the fear of something beyond her imagination, a fear of the unknown. Should she charge bravely forward, or back off and flee? Those were the only 2 options left to her. Clementine was cruel and merciless, but she was no fool. In that fraction of a second, she worked out countless possibilities and countermeasures. In the end, it was her pride and her confidence in her abilities which spurred Clementine on. Though she had betrayed them, she had once been a member of the slain theocracy's strongest special operations group, the Black Scripture. There were probably less than 10 warriors who could defeat her. It was unthinkable that she should flee from Mammon, an unknown fighter with hardly any skills to speak of. Once she made her decision, the rest was easy. There was no need to hesitate any further. As she recovered the composure of a first-rate warrior, Clementine sprinted for Mammon's chest, so fast it seemed they were going to embrace each other. Die. Using all the muscles in her body, Clementine thrust her stiletto into the vision slit of Mammon's full helm. Then she twisted it, as though intending to cause further damage to the surrounding organs while driving it deeper into his head. All this was to inflict a fatal blow. Although his armored hands drew closer, as if to hug her, she paid it no heed and followed up on her attack. In keeping with Clementine's desire to deal a fatal strike, she unleashed the spell stored within the stiletto. That spell was called lightning. Lightning bolts shot through Ain's body. Clementine's weapons possessed a magic accumulate enchantment. She could store a spell within the weapon and release it later. Although the act of doing so would expend the spell, that stored spell could be just about any sort of magic. Thus, it was a handy enchantment, which allowed her to prepare for just about any situation with the right stored spell. She drove the stiletto deep into his skull, and then released a lightning attack on top of it. This was certainly a fatal blow. However, I'm not done yet. Flow acceleration. Even faster than before, she drove another stiletto into the full helm's vision slit, and then released the fireball spell locked within. In her mind, Clementine saw Mammon's body burning within his armor, and she imagined she could smell his scorched and blackened flesh. However, Clementine's eyes went wide in shock, as she was confronted by an unexpected sight. I see. Yggdrasil did not have magic weapons like this. Well, this is an eye-opener. Despite having stilettos stabbed through both his eye sockets,